Think you know Chuck Norris? Think again. Just last month, aboard flight QF-127, an arrogant businessman made the mistake of disrespecting the legendary martial artist himself. And what went down on that flight? It'll reveal a side of him that few have ever witnessed. But before we dive in, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. It all unfolded at Sydney International Airport, December 2024. Chuck Norris strolled through the first-class cabin of the Los Angeles-bound flight. His worn boots and leather vest turned a few curious heads. Partially hidden beneath his signature cowboy hat, his famous face remained mostly concealed as he quietly settled into seat number 6. That's when the yelling started. "Hey, poor man. That's my seat. Get the hell out." Standing in the aisle, Derek Langston, a businessman in a crisp navy suit, glared down. The vein in his forehead pulsed with anger. Fresh off a failed business deal that had cost him millions, he was already on edge. And now, his frustration had found a target. Chuck looked up, his signature calm smile in place. "Afternoon, partner. Mind if we check those tickets?" Derek's face flushed red. "Check the tickets? Look at yourself. You clearly wandered in from economy. First class isn't for people like you." Chuck calmly took Derek's ticket. And that's when the entire situation flipped. With a subtle motion, Chuck turned the ticket right side up, making a few passengers stifle their laughter. Derek's seat. Number 9, not number 6. "I don't care what the ticket says." Derek spat. "Someone like you can't afford first class. What'd you do? Sell your ranch to buy this ticket?" A flight attendant stepped in. "Sir, your seat is. Do you know who I am?" Derek cut her off, puffing his chest. "I'm Derek Langston, CEO of Langston Enterprises." His voice wavered just slightly. That morning's financial news had been brutal. A $50 million deal, gone, crumbled before his very eyes. Chuck adjusted his hat, his voice steady. "Sometimes, life has a way of teaching us humility, Mr. Langston." Derek let out a harsh laugh. "Humility? I built my empire from nothing, and I sure as hell won't be lectured by some cowboy who probably counts his money in quarters." Chuck's gaze locked onto him. "You might want to count again, partner." And with those words, something shifted in that first-class cabin. A hush fell over the space as Chuck leaned back in his seat. "Try thousands per roundhouse kick." His words, calm yet firm, cut through the air like a blade. Derek's face twisted with rage. "Listen here, you worthless piece of—" He caught himself just as a nearby mother covered her child's ears. "First class is for real successful people. Not some wannabe cowboy who thinks dressing up for rodeo day makes him special." Chuck stood, slowly, and despite the casualness of his movements, there was power in them, a quiet intensity that made 2 flight attendants exchange knowing glances. His presence alone was enough to shift the energy in the room. Success isn't measured by the suit you wear, partner. Sometimes, strength isn't about how firm you stand. It's about how you treat others when no one's watching. Derek let out a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed through the cabin. "Oh, spare me the cowboy wisdom. What would you know about success? Your boots probably cost less than my watch strap." Just then, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, his eyes wide with recognition. She quickly pulled out her phone, her fingers moving frantically across the screen as realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. Chuck leaned back into his seat, his expression as calm as ever. "Might want to check your social media, friend," he said, adjusting his hat. Seems like today's business news about Langston Enterprises is causing quite the stir. Derek's face drained of color. The failed Sydney deal. How did this stranger know about it? His company's stock was in freefall. His biggest client had walked away just hours ago, and now this cowboy was rubbing salt in the wound. Who are you? Derek's voice wavered. Chuck simply flashed that same knowing smile, the one that had shaken countless opponents in the ring. Just someone who learned that real power isn't about tearing others down. That's when the whispers began. A teenage girl in row 4 gasped, holding up her phone for her parents to see. Within seconds, recognition rippled through the cabin like wildfire. And Derek? He was about to realize exactly who he'd been insulting. Determined to reclaim some control, Derek squared his shoulders and barked, "Security. Can someone call security? This man refuses to move to his proper seat in economy." The head flight attendant stepped forward, trying, and failing, to suppress a smile. "Sir, I've checked the manifest. Mr. Norris is indeed assigned to seat 6A. Prime. Mr. Norris." Derek's throat went dry. A silver-haired man across the aisle leaned forward with a smirk. "Son, you've been yelling at Chuck Norris for the past 10 minutes. Silence." Derek's breath hitched. His mind raced. The worn boots. The confident stance. The martial arts reference. It all clicked, and in the worst way possible. That's impossible," he stammered. Chuck's eyes twinkled. "Impossible like what, partner?" Derek swallowed hard. Like someone who values comfort over appearance?" Chuck tilted his head. "Like someone who doesn't need a fancy suit to know his worth?" Laughter rippled through the cabin. Passengers had their phones out, capturing every second of Derek's humiliation. His social media nightmare had only just begun. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. His designer tie suddenly felt like a noose. "Mr. Norris, I didn't." Chuck simply gestured toward the back of the cabin. "Seat 9A is right back there, partner. Unless you'd prefer economy?" More laughter. Derek's face burned with shame. But Chuck wasn't done teaching his lesson. As Derek turned, ready to slink away, Chuck's next words froze him in place. "You know the difference between strength and power?" Derek hesitated, turning back, his face a mix of shame and curiosity. Chuck Norris was about to teach him something that would change his life forever. "Real strength," Chuck continued, his voice carrying effortlessly through the now silent cabin, "isn't about making others feel small. It's about lifting them up, even when they've tried to tear you down." Derek stood there, motionless. The arrogance, the ego, was crumbling before everyone's eyes. The man he'd mocked, the legend he'd insulted, was not just a celebrity. He was Chuck Norris, a man known worldwide, not just for his fighting skills, but for his character. Chuck stood once more, his presence alone commanding the room. "I've spent my life teaching people how to defend themselves," he said, voice steady. "But the most important battles? They aren't fought with fists. They're fought within ourselves, against our own pride and prejudice." A flight attendant appeared beside Derek, holding out his carry-on. "Sir, your seat is ready." But Derek didn't move. His mind was racing. Every insult he'd thrown, every condescending word, and for the first time in his life, Derek Langston was speechless. I'm finished," Derek muttered under his breath. "First, the deal, now this. By tomorrow, everyone would know." "Know what?" Chuck's voice was calm, almost gentle. "That you had a bad day? that you made a mistake, or that you learned from it. Derek lifted his head, caught off guard by the lack of judgment in Chuck's tone. Chuck leaned back slightly. The world's quick to condemn, but slow to forgive. He paused before adding, "True redemption? It starts when we own up to our mistakes." From across the aisle, an elderly passenger spoke up. "I remember when you started in films, Mr. Norris. You were always humble, even at the height of your fame." Chuck gave a small nod. "Because every day, someone reminded me where I came from, and I never wanted to forget." Derek's legs felt weak. The man he'd mocked for looking poor had more wealth, both material and spiritual, than he could even comprehend, and instead of humiliating him in return, Chuck Norris was offering him something far more valuable than a first-class seat. Chuck gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Take a seat, partner. Let me tell you about my first Hollywood audition." Derek hesitated, then slowly sat down. The other passengers watched in astonishment as Chuck Norris, martial arts champion, movie star, cultural icon, began sharing his story. "I showed up in boots, just like these." Chuck grinned, tapping his worn footwear. "The producer took one look at me and said I belonged in the stables, not on camera." He paused. "Know what I did?" Derek, still trying to process everything, shook his head. "I thanked him for his time," Chuck continued. "Then I went home, trained harder, and came back the next month, still wearing my boots." 2 rows back, a young boy had his phone out, recording every second. But for once, Derek didn't care about social media. His own words rang in his ears. "First class isn't for people like you." Derek swallowed. "Did you get the part?" he asked quietly. Chuck nodded. "Eventually." 3 months after that flight, Derek Langston was making headlines again, but not for a business deal. This time, it was for revolutionizing his company's culture. Now, every new employee is handed a pair of worn boots on their first day, accompanied by a simple note. "Your character matters more than your clothes." That viral video of his run-in with Chuck Norris didn't ruin him like he once feared. Instead, it became a symbol of transformation, a reminder that real class isn't about net worth, but self-worth. And as for Chuck, a week later, Derek received a signed photo. But it wasn't of a roundhouse kick or a movie pose. It was a picture of those same scuffed boots, with a message that read, "Keep walking the right path, partner. Sometimes, life's biggest lessons come wrapped in the most unexpected packages." For Derek, it came in the form of a cowboy-dressed legend, who taught him that humility isn't a weakness. It's the foundation of real strength. You see, folks, it's easy to judge others by how they dress, how much they earn, or where they sit. But that day, Chuck Norris proved a simple truth. Real class. It's not about your seat on the plane. It's about how you treat the person sitting next to you. And Derek, well, he finally understood what true success looks like. It's not about the suit you wear or the title you hold. It's about the lives you impact and the hearts you change. If this story of redemption inspired you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Drop a comment below. What was your favorite piece of Chuck's wisdom? This is Ludwig, reminding you, sometimes, the best lessons in life come from the most unexpected teachers. See you in the next video.